to Virtual Veg-Out, a partnership between the Jessamine County Public Library and the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment's Cooperative Extension Service. In this series of programs, we'll demonstrate how to prepare vegetarian and vegan versions of some classic dishes. We'll add some variations so you can use other ingredients you have on hand. Plus, we'll tell you a bit about their history and nutritional content. The first dish we're going to tackle is lasagna. Nobody knows how old lasagna is, but it's one of the earliest forms of pasta. Before there was ever the modern dish that we think of as lasagna, there were many proto-dishes that had pastas or pastries layered with cheeses, spices, and meats. Long before the 1st century, the ancient Greeks were eating a thin dough cut into strips called laganon. The first recorded laganon recipe appears in the 1st century AD in the Apicius, a collection of Roman recipes also called the De Re Coquinaria, translated as On the Subject of Cooking. In the Apicius, the laganon calls for a water and flour dough to be rolled into thin sheets and deep fried in oil. Another recipe for a lasagna-like dish called lasagnis appears in the Liber de Coquina, translated as the Book of Cookery. It's one of the oldest medieval cookbooks. 2 codices dating from the beginning of the 14th century are preserved at the National Library of France in Paris. The recipe for lasagnis calls for a thinly rolled fermented dough cut into squares of 3 finger breadths per side. The sheets are then boiled in broth and layered with cheese and good powdered spices. Finally, the recipe suggests that you eat the layered squares of pasta by stabbing them onto a wooden stick. In medieval cooking, the powdered spices probably referred to powder fort, literally strong powder. It was a blend that contained cinnamon, ginger, cloves, nutmeg, ground peppercorns, and cubebs, which are the small seed of a cardamom-like plant. Now, ratios of these spices varied, and not all of them were always part of the recipe. Other spices might have been thrown in as well, due to the fact that each cook made their own blend. Still, it's not exactly the flavor profile we expect to see in lasagna. Even later in the 14th century, a dish for Lausiens appears in the Forme de Curie, a British cookbook prepared by the chefs of King Richard II. The recipe for Lausiens again calls for boiled sheets of eggless pasta to be layered with cheese and spices, then baked. It bears similarities to our modern lasagna, but still doesn't contain any of the tomato sauce, garlic, or the spices we associate with the modern dish. Finally, in the mid-1500s, tomatoes come to the area that is now Italy. Sometime many years later, the tomatoes are incorporated into the lasagna. Now, some sources say that this happened as early as 1692. Others argue it didn't occur till 1880. 2 regions of Italy, Bologna and Naples, developed distinctive types of lasagna dishes: lasagna alla bolognese al forno and lasagna alla napoletana. Of lasagna look like the lasagna we know and love. It has sheets of pasta, cheeses, and ragu, which is really a meat-based sauce that could include beef, lamb, veal, pork, or even fish, along with carrots, celery, and onions, pancetta, wine, broth, some tomatoes, and a cream to thicken it. Lasagna alla bolognese contains a bechamel sauce with Parmesan cheese instead of the layers of mozzarella and ricotta that we expect. It's undergone so many changes, especially here in the States, where we'll happily mix cooking traditions and flavors. Anyone like some Tex-Mex lasagna with tortillas? While purists may think that messing with the traditional lasagna recipe is a terrible idea, we've already done that many times. For instance, garlic, oregano, and basil are not standard in the original lasagna recipes, but carrots and celery are. And no one could argue that either the traditional or Americanized versions are the healthiest of meals. One slice of typical lasagna is laden with calories, cholesterol, saturated fat, and provides very little fiber and only moderate quantities of vitamins and minerals. We're going to offer 2 updated versions of this dish. First, I'm going to let Carly Jesse from the Jessamine County branch of the UK Cooperative Extension Service show you her vegetarian version.
For this recipe, you will need your favorite lasagna noodles. The oven ready works perfect in this recipe. 2 cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley, 1 medium-sized onion or half of a large onion, 1 bag of frozen chopped spinach, 1 jar of marinara sauce plus an additional cup, 2 cups of mozzarella cheese, 1 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese, and 1.5 cups of cottage cheese. To season, salt and pepper to taste.
Now I'll share my vegan version with you. First, what if you don't have some lasagna noodles at home? That's not a problem. Most Italians still make their own. If you've got flour and water, you've got noodles. A pasta roller comes in handy, but a rolling pin will work too. Chopped fresh spinach adds more fiber, nutrients, and color. Put about 2 cups of flour in a bowl with a bit of salt. Slowly add water and spinach if you're using it. Stir till the mixture comes together into a sticky dough, and then knead it until it's nice and stretchy and smooth, but not dry. Put it in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes, and then roll it into thin strips and cut it. I prefer to boil my noodles before baking because fresh noodles can get kind of sticky otherwise. If you can't do flour, eggplant and zucchinis can be made into noodles. Look for recipes online, there are dozens. Now for the ragu. I like to add thickness and flavor to my sauce by grinding up sun-dried tomatoes with roasted red pepper, olive oil, basil, fresh garlic, and balsamic vinegar in a food processor to make the tomatoes paste. Of course, a regular tomato paste will work too, and you can still add the other ingredients for flavor. A good jar of thick sauce will work to substitute for the whole concoction if you have to. Protein substitutes can include lentils, quinoa, tempeh, tofu, mushrooms, or any kind of packaged veggie meat substitute, or mix up a number of those things together. I start by stir-frying the onions along with the mushrooms and the ground veggie crumbles in a pan with olive oil and the onions until they're soft. Then I add the lentils, a can of crushed tomatoes, and the sun-dried tomato paste mixture. Lastly, I add some red pepper flakes, salt if it needs it, and the chopped fresh spinach and oregano. If you want to make your own vegan mozzarella and ricotta, check out Nora Cooks and look for her best vegan lasagna. She shows you how to do both. You'll need some cashew milk, or cashews, other nuts might work too, lemon juice, tapioca flour, garlic powder, vegan butter, olive oil might be a good substitute, vinegar, preferably apple cider, tofu, and the awesomest of ingredients, nutritional yeast. If you don't have nutritional yeast, get some. You'll know why I say this if you read the nutrition info on the back. You can also use store-bought vegan cheese. You could just leave the cheese out, but it won't be nearly as lasagna-like. Or go ahead and add in real cheese, but watch that fat and sugar. Cheese is heavy in both, and sometimes in sodium too. Layer your noodles with the ragu and the nut cheeses and stick it in the oven and bake. My dish cuts the fat per slice in half and reduces cholesterol to 0. It has 10 times the fiber of regular lasagna, has comparable protein, and it drastically increases the vitamin and mineral content in all regards, in some cases by 100%. Enjoy your lasagna and your health. Thanks for watching.